Everyone has moments in life they can't just stop thinking about. They can be embarrassing things, like that one time you face planted in front of a group of teenagers, or something amazing like the first time you hosted your family for the holidays. And on Baby, This is Keke Palmer, hosted by me, Keke Palmer, and presented by BMW, we know to savor the good memories and let go of the bad. And one thing everyone remembers fondly is their first time behind the wheel of a BMW. So come join me and BMW this summer as we explore pop culture moments and topics you just can't stop thinking about on Baby, This is Keke Palmer, sponsored by BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Little Cuts, our weekly minisode. I don't know why I said that differently this time, but here we go. Our weekly minisode where we dig into the things we've been watching recently. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth. And this week we're talking disaster film two ways, a nasty found footage movie, a movie about food and farts, Leatherface again, and I don't know what I watched, but I liked it.
Yeah. Okay, so before we do talk about the movies, though, we got 2 reviews this last week, Mary Beth.
We did. I'm so happy and I'm so excited because someone even made an iTunes account just to review us, which made me so happy. Tony Kaufman, longtime listener and friend of the pod, created an account just to review us, and we appreciate that so, so much.
Yeah, we certainly do. And he said that the chemistry between us is delightful.
Ooh.
And that he could listen to us talk for literally on hours on end. I don't know if you really would like to hear us talk for literally hours on end. I'd probably get tired of my voice. But it's so nice of you, Tony. And by the way, listeners, he says that his comfort episode is the one with Justin Nordell, which was talking about Tremors. And that's episode 91. Incredible. If you want to go give that one a listen. It is a good episode. But he does not have a request necessarily for you to give him a found footage movie, Mary Beth, but he does want you to talk about Savage Land because he feels it's underseen and scary, and he thinks it would pair well with Lake Mungo for the haunting images and the Bay for the events happening into a whole town. I don't know anything about this movie.
All right.
Break it down.
Break it down. Savage Land is incredible. So Savage Land is a really fascinating found footage movie because the found footage is actually a series of photographs. And so it's based on a border town in Arizona, I believe. I might be wrong about that. But this whole town is murdered. It's like decimated. And there is only one survivor. He is an undocumented immigrant who took photos of everything. And everyone is so it's like a pseudo documentary and how it basically is looking at how this guy was profiled and seen as the bad guy because he was a Mexican immigrant. Oh. But the whole point of this movie is to kind of debunk his, like, what he's been accused of and like really look into what happened that night. And so it's like very political in a way that is really fascinating in terms of talking about immigration and how immigrants are treated in the United States. And as as they progress, they look at these photos, and they're incredibly haunting photos that I actually will tweet out a couple when this episode goes live, because there are these haunting photographs, and they're really blurry, and they're of creatures coming after people. And it's incredible. And it kind of like the night unfolds because this guy is known for loving photography. So he always carried a camera around and was just like documenting his life. And so he caught all of these events on camera, and they're unexplainable. But it's like him documenting this outbreak of something. And it is incredibly done. I agree that it would definitely pair well with The Bay because it's an entire town getting like absolutely wrecked. You're just kind of seeing the after effects rather than what's happening in the moment. And I see the Lake Mungo because Lake Mungo uses photos as well. So it's an interesting kind of different idea of found footage through different kinds of images. So I'm a huge fan of Savage Land, and it is definitely slept on. I believe it's streaming on Tubi. Cool. But it's just like a really cool use of found footage. So yes, Savage Land. Do not sleep on Savage Land. It's so good.
And then our second review is from Snail Girl 182, who says that they're a longtime listener. They love the podcast, and it's always interesting to look back at what scared people as kids. They also called us delightful, which was nice. So what would be your found footage recommendation for Snail Girl 182?
Okay, yeah, that's the one I wanted to do. So my found footage recommendation for Snail Girl is Butterfly Kisses from 2018, directed by Eric Christopher Myers, who unfortunately passed away a couple weeks ago. It's really sad.
No.
Yeah. But Butterfly Kisses is his film. It is
I remember
really
you
interesting.
talking about this one to me.
Yeah, it's like found footage and pseudo documentary all kind of layered over each other. So it's like a very incredible. It's weirdly meta, and also it takes place in Maryland, where I live. So always love a good Maryland movie. But it's urban legend found footage. So it's like there's footage of two college students making a documentary about a urban legend. And then this guy finds their footage and starts making a documentary about what happened to them and if the urban legend is real. So it's all kind of spliced together in a really interesting way, and it's creepy as shit. So I highly recommend that one. It's available everywhere to, I believe, rent, but it's really good and it's really creepy. And again, it's a really cool use of like layering all different kinds of footage. So that is my recommendation for Snail Girl.
Oh yeah. So let's continue with the found footage, though. What is this nasty found footage?
Okay, so for Valentine's Day, because romance, I watched Capture, Kill, Release.
Oh, okay.
Directed by Nick McAnulty and Brian Allen Stewart. And Capture, Kill, Release is a found footage movie where a couple is plotting to murder a random stranger just for the thrill of it, but things kind of go wrong because one of them is not so into the idea of murdering somebody. So, yes, I watched this for Valentine's Day because it's a couple and it's them recording each other, kind of like planning out this murder. And my favorite part of this movie is the fact that Jen, the woman in this relationship, is the psychopath who wants to commit the murder, and her husband, Farhang, is like, absolutely not. So it's got like this really nasty woman in the center of it, which I absolutely love. It's like a snuff film, though. It's pretty fucked up.
I have actually seen this one.
You have? I saw on Letterboxd, and I was like, Terry has seen this?
I don't know why I've seen this one because it's totally outside of my wheelhouse, but I have seen this one. I don't remember. I'm wondering if Tony actually recommended this one to me. Tony Kaufman. I can't remember. Someone did. Someone told me to watch this, and I did. I don't remember much about it, but when you start talking about it, things started to like click back in my head. But yeah, I've seen this one.
That's so weird. Wow. Like, I knew it was fucked, but it's fucked up, y'all. It's nasty. I think the ending is a little rocky, but like it's really good because it's like one of the it's very close to a movie called Long Pigs where these two guys are documenting a serial killer cannibal and it's really nasty. Yeah, it's a great movie. You can't find it anywhere. I'm sorry. But it's fucking good. Anyway, it's like very close to Snuff. because it like they're cutting up bodies and it looks like they're cutting up bodies, and it's like close-ups of bone saws and stuff, and it's ridiculous. Also, this is one of the only found footage movies I've seen where they very explicitly show the couple having sex, so it definitely feels like porno. And the woman is the one initiating and holding the camera, which you know how much I love that shit when it's not like a guy hiding the camera. And she even hides the camera once when they're going to have sex. It's like incredible gender dynamics in this movie. Yeah, it's really cool. And like I think that's why I liked it so much, because she is like the antithesis of what a woman looks like in these movies, and it's incredible. Like she is in control the whole time, and she is just like, it's gross as shit, and like it's hard to watch, but I absolutely loved it. So
I remember thinking that when I watched it.
Yes. But yeah, so what are these environmental disaster films? Two ways. Oh, sorry, not environmental disaster films.
Well, they are environmental disaster films. So, so I'm going to talk about them kind of quickly. The Burning Sea is coming out next week. I will talk about that next week when the embargo is up. But like, because it's coming out and it's directed by John Andreas Anderson, who also directed a movie called The Quake, which is also a sequel to a movie called The Wave. I was like, I'm going to watch The Wave and The Quake first so I can get a good feel for this movie. And I made a day of it on Saturday and watched The Wave, The Quake, and The Burning Sea. So The Wave is about, this is not The Wave on IMDb. So The Wave, they're all Norwegian. They're Norwegian disaster films. And The Wave is about this family, a geologist and his wife and his daughter and his older son, and they live in this small town. He's like planning on moving to the big city with them, and they're like hacking up their place. He's been a geologist in this town and has been tracking this kind of tectonic plate thing in the mountain that like seems to want to do something at some point. And he's kind of a little paranoid, and his coworkers are like, yeah, you just need to go, just go. They've kind of like been sort of placating him this entire time, but he's like, the big one's going to happen. And what happens? The big one happens. And it causes an avalanche, which causes the rocks to start falling into the water, which causes a huge 85-foot high tsunami. The town has like 10 minutes to react to it before they're going to be decimated. And so it's following this. And it is a small scale movie, but I'll tell you what, it nails what is so good about disaster films. Because like, I think American disaster films anymore are big on like the special effects and all that kind of stuff. And this movie has a lot of special effects, but it grounds it in this family, in this human story that like you actually care about the people, and you get emotional because you see like the best in humanity as they're trying to like help each other out, knowing that this wave is going to come crashing down and destroy everything. And it's really, really, really fucking good. I'm really sad that it took me 7 years.
I've heard that it's really fucking good. Like, I want to watch it. Just another thing that's like on my plate, but like I've heard it's good. So hearing you say it's really good, I love, because disaster movies kind of scare the shit out of me, and like I have a hard time watching them because they trigger a lot of anxiety in me.
This one is anxiety driven. Like there's this part where like they have 10 minutes. They're like seaside, and they have to get up to an altitude past where the wave is going to come crashing down. And there's like a scene of like everyone trying to leave this town and the traffic, and he is like running and trying to get everyone out of the car and get them running up as this wave is literally bearing down on them. It is intense. This movie is so fucking good. So fucking good.
Okay. Cool. I feel nauseous with you telling about that, but I still watch it.
Yeah. They follow it up 3 years later with The Quake, which follows the same family. These guys cannot catch a break. They have moved to Oslo, but what The Quake does, so I don't think The Quake is as good as The Wave, but it handles PTSD in a way that is incredibly emotional, because now this family, the surviving parts of the family, well, the whole family survived, spoiler alert. But anyway, so the surviving family, they're now like, they're kind of separated because he can't let go of the fact that he let people die. He is traumatized by that. There's a couple scenes where they do it so subtly where his daughter, it's 3 years later, his daughter kind of shows up back at his house, and like his house is a mess. It is covered in a bunch of shit. He's not hasn't been to the grocery store. When he's sitting there with a cup of coffee, his hand is shaking. Like, there is severe trauma that he's working through, and it has caused him to regress and leave and he ends up having to go back to Oslo, where the family has relocated. And then, of course, the quake happens. And
surprise, motherfuckers!
And it's
it ain't over.
I don't think that it's as good as The Wave, but it is still incredibly well done. There's a moment in it where I literally gasped at something that happens. It's so good, and it has really, really good special effects. You know, you would think it doesn't have the budget of like a Hollywood movie that, you know, Roland Emmerich is not destroying the world in this one, but the effects are so fucking good that like it works so well. So while the Quake is not as good as The Wave, it's still a really good movie, and I highly recommend watching the both of them.
Fuck yeah. Okay, cool. Now I want to see The Burning Sea. Ooh, I'm excited to hear about it next week.
Yeah, I'll talk about that one next week when I'm allowed to. Okay.
Speaking of movies we're finally allowed to talk about.
Well, do you want to talk about a movie about food and farts, or do you want to talk about other things?
Food and farts. I forgot about my food and farts. Never mind.
So what is this food and farts movie, Mary Beth?
Okay, so this is Peter Strickland's Flux Gourmet, which premiered out of Berlinale, and I got a screener link for it. They were like, "Hey, you want a screener link?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I do." That trailer looks fucking ridiculous.
It does. I want to see this.
Fucking ridiculous, and it's my favorite movie of his. It is his best movie.
Hell yeah!
It is so good. So it takes place in a world where instead of rock stars, you have like these sonic artists who make music out of food specifically. Like it's like so fucking bizarre, but everything is played like a Yorgos Lanthimos movie, so it's like very deadpan. And so like the biggest thing to do is like your group becomes your collective is like accepted into this like residency where they can prove how incredible they are at their art. And so they're at this residency, and it all just like starts going to shit because they all hate each other. One of the reporter following them and like writing a story about them has gastrointestinal issues, which they start using for their music.
Oh no.
And then Gwendolyn Christie, aka Brie of Tarth, Tall Angel Woman, is in this as the head of the institute that's funding them, and she is in the best 70s outfits I've ever seen with incredibly graphic eyeliner, and it's so fucking weird, and it's just so cool. I don't understand how a movie about like this guy, the guy narrating it is the journalist with the gastrointestinal issues, and he's like talking about like the embarrassment of having to fart in front of people when you're having stomach problems. And it's like weirdly endearing because movies about like fart jokes are annoying to me. But it's like played in a way that it's like, hey, this is like really embarrassing when this happens. And it's really hard to have like a gastrointestinal issue, especially around food. And it was actually very interesting in how it looked at like that experience, while also being ridiculous. And they make music out of food and like cover themselves in blood and like roll around on the floor. Yeah. It's great. So
I'm so excited to hear that. I've seen the trailer and I was like, oh, I can't wait for this. So I'm glad to hear that it's actually good. It looks wild.
Yes. So I don't think it has a release date yet, but it's great. And for those who don't know, Peter Strickland did like In Fabric, he did the Barbarian Sound Studio, and then he also did Duke of Burgundy. So his movies have like a very distinct style to them, and this one is no different. So you want something fucking weird? That's the one. That's the one. Okay. So now we finally have to talk about something that we haven't been able to talk about, and that little something is the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, whose embargo finally lifted this morning at 12 a.m. So,
there might be a reason for that. But
no fucking shit. Sorry.
Okay, so you saw this before me, and I went into it with what you had said in the back of my mind, and I don't know what to think about this movie, Mary Beth, because I didn't hate it.
Wow.
But there's a huge ass but attached to that, because I think the politics I think the politics are really muddy. To say, like, to put it politely?
Oh, to put it lightly, they're muddy. To put it angrily, they're gross.
You want to elaborate on that? I'm curious.
Yes, this movie made me so fucking angry. So first of all, it's a group of like wealthy guys and gals from Austin, Texas, moving into the small town of Harlow to like basically they bought the town and they're going to make it into like the influencer's paradise. And it's like this commentary on gentrification. And then there's a mass shooting subplot that is also in part of it. And then there's like this weird gun message where it's like pro-gun, but not pro-gun. Like very weird mixed messaging there. And then there's a Confederate flag waving at one point. And Alice Krieg says the N-word, but not the bad N-word, not the really bad N-word, just the other N-word, if that makes any sense. I just don't want to say it. And there's like a white savior guy, and it's just all gross. It's just bad. It's like weirdly conservative, and it's just weird. Fede Alvarez really took a turn, my dudes. So I feel very strongly about this movie. It's so bad.
Yeah.
But what's frustrating is the kills are really good.
The kills are really good, and we actually get a Chainsaw Massacre.
We do get a Chainsaw Massacre.
I was thinking back to the number of times in a movie called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre that we've actually had a massacre with a chainsaw. And we get a massacre with a chainsaw on this. A very bloody one. A very bloody one.
It's incredible. And then, like, Sally Hardesty in this movie is a fucking joke.
Oh my god.
That was an egregious error.
She did not need to be in this movie because she's in it for maybe a blink and a moment and she's there like type of moment. It is. I feel like they had the script and then because of like Halloween coming out, they're like, we have to have Sally back. I know that the actress that played her is dead, but we got to somehow get her back because that's all the rage right now. I mean, even Scream makes fun of that, right? The new Scream movie makes fun of that while also doing it, ha ha ha. But at least you could say the Halloween movie grounds the narrative in her story, whereas here we know so little about her other than she survived this massacre. She became a park ranger. She now guts pigs, and then she shows up only to nothing. It's just. No, it was not good. And I can't disagree with anything that you said. For me, I thought that the politics of the gun was very muddied. I was like, I don't know what you're trying to say here.
Yeah, it's super weird.
And that's where I was like, I had an issue because I don't know what it is trying to say here. And I read, before I watched the movie, I did read this interview on Polygon with the director. And that really like threw me for a loop too, because the director seemed to think that they were making a nuanced and complex take on gun violence.
That's like Fede Alvarez saying they were putting like a nuanced take on villains in Don't Breathe 2, and it was rape apologists the movie. So like, don't think these boys quite know what nuance means, but
yeah, and I think that's probably the worst part of this movie for me is that like they obviously have a reverence for Tobe Hooper's classic. And in the interview, they even bring up parts about how like that movie was very angry and it was very anti-Vietnam and it was like a allegory for America in that time, you know? But I feel like they missed having a point where like the gun violence in this feels like more like curtain dressing than it does an actual meaty topic to dig into. Like, I think there could be something interesting where you take the idea of Leatherface and you use it as Tobe Hooper did back then to explore America's relationship with the outside world and ignoring the inside world. I think you could do that in an interesting way here with gun violence, which is a huge issue. It's one that we should be mad about, but I don't think they do that at all. The most nuance is a woman who has survived gun violence looking at an AR-15 and contemplating picking it up to use it to save herself. That's as far as the nuance goes. I have written more about this movie in a review than any other movie I have done in a very long time. Like, we are over 2 pages because I don't know what to say. If you are interested in seeing gore, you might like this movie if you can just turn your brain off. But if you have thoughts about social issues, this movie will probably kind of piss you off.
Very curious what Twitter looks like today. Or is going to look like today. I tweeted earlier that as like me when the embargo drops, and it's that the Green Goblin. Gosh, Willem Dafoe is like crazy picture from the backseat of a car. It's a great GIF reaction, and yeah, spoiler. This is that movie that I was talking about. If you follow me on Twitter, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, y'all. It looks beautiful. It looks good. It's shot really well.
The score was good.
The score was good. It was really cool how they incorporated like the chainsaw. I always love when they have like the synergy with stuff like that. There was some cool stuff.
Yeah, and the score's by the guy that did Hereditary.
It sure is, and I love him. I listened to the Hereditary soundtrack to relax.
Oh.
She's broken. She's broken. Sorry, folks. It's not good.
So, finally, I had watched this movie, I think, in 2018 and kind of forgot that I had watched it. And Mary Beth found my review on Letterboxd that was like, I don't know what I watched, but I liked it. And rewatching this movie, I feel the same way, but I'm curious what your take is on the Italian horror film from 1993, Dark Waters.
Okay, so let me just give y'all a quick synopsis so you can kind of understand what the fuck is happening here.
Understand.
Yeah, so, okay, this is from Letterboxd, so it's like the quote. I'm going to read the quote above it and then the synopsis. The quote above it: I am she that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore, and have the keys of hell and of death. Metal as shit. Love it.
Hell yeah.
Incredible. Like, incredible. A woman investigates the disappearance of her friend and her own murky past when she travels to a mysterious convent on a barren island. That does not even scratch the surface of what happens in this fucking movie.
IMDb is not even much helpful either, because IMDb says a girl travels to an island after the death of her father to find out why the father funded a monastery on the island.
Like, it doesn't sound like folk horror, but let me tell you guys, this movie is incredible. I don't really understand what happened totally because there isn't really a story. Like, there's a story, like there is enough of a story that it makes mostly sense, but there is just like the loosest version of that because it's just like a lot of fucked up images for the most part, and I love it. It's vibes the movie.
Yeah, it really perfect. Put that on the poster for sure because like my notes, I was like looking through my notes and I was like, okay, so we have monks standing on a craggy cliff overlooking the sea holding crosses with a bell. There's quick shots of environments of crypts with candles, which, side note, kudos to the production designer and whoever poor assistant had to go in, put those everywhere and light them because there is a ton of candles in these caverns. There's a glass filled with rain. There's Jesus on the wall. There's arcane books. There's water dripping everywhere. A door bursts open and gushes water. It smashes the Christ figure and submerges the priest. Like, there's so many of these little tiny images throughout the movie that, like, a lot of this beginning part is pretty voiceless. Like, it's mostly a wordless opening, just showing all these images. And I think that kind of continues throughout it, even when there's voice in it. It's still a whole lot of just like images that kind of stick with you. A man hunched over on a boat, gnawing at raw fish.
He keeps the freaks away. What the fuck are you talking about? What does that mean?
Which also, side note, I fucking brought a movie with spiders in it to the podcast. How dare I?
You do you, boo.
How dare
I? You did this to you.
I did do this to me.
But someone on Letterboxd compared it to The Wicker Man, and I see that comparison. Like, it's loose, so don't like, but it's very much like this woman is essentially lured to a place and she realizes that something very fucking weird is happening, and the longer she stays there, the more fucked it gets. And there are nuns carrying a cross on fire, and they have a bunch of whips and they lash people, and it's wild. And they're all just like bloodthirsty nuns, and one of them is blind and just like croaks her words, and only one nun can decipher it. And it's just like, who is this?
That scene was so good, though. Like,
it was
just
so good. It's
creepy
so
old woman with
creepy.
so much cataracts in her eyes. Her eyes are like white, and she's just like, and somehow the other nun is able to understand her. And it's like, and then there's a moment later where our protagonist, I don't even know what her name is. Elizabeth.
Yeah. Sarah was the nun.
Yeah. So there's a scene where Elizabeth is walking over a rope bridge and it breaks and she falls into this pit, and there's this blind man who has spent the entire time painting these surreal paintings is like coming toward her, sniffing her out because it can't see. Like, there's just these really fascinating and trippy and haunting and just like lingering images that this movie just like throws at you without much words or without much fanfare. It's just creepy image after creepy image.
And like, how do I describe? I'm just like trying to just like figure out how I felt with this movie and like the vibe, and like you said, just like the images over and over, and like there's an overarching like it's like, again, overarching story that kind of pops in every once in a while. It's like, oh, just to let you know there is actually something happening here. It gave me like a little bit of Suspiria vibes too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got like big Suspiria vibes, and I think that's the kind of feeling I'm describing of that feeling of watching Suspiria for the first time, of like dread and fascination, and like you're entranced with what's happening, but it's also really freaky, but it's like not always like obviously scary. It's got dread in it. It's just like, whew. Anyway, if that made sense. It's just really good. I really, really liked it. It makes no sense. And the acting's kind of terrible, but like, it's really good.
It's not great. Yeah. There's a scene where there's like hundreds of dead fish on the rocky shore, and she's just like walking over them, and it's the sound of them kind of crunching, also in squishiness at the same time. And it's just like these images just like, even though I saw this and I did not remember this movie, when I came to these moments, they were just like, they popped right in my mind. I was like, oh yeah, this has lingered here. This has lingered here. This has been living rent free in the back of my recesses of my mind since 2018. There's a fleshy pulsating thing that you kind of spy behind a wall. I'm just like, what is going on in this movie?
There's like a weird face on a rock that everyone has. There's a crying baby and then laughing kids. She starts eating those raw fish. She pulls a heart out of something. I don't know. It's all fucking bizarre. It's just like vibes.
It's a nightmare. It's like a nightmare that just keeps going.
It's awesome.
It's so good.
It's on Shudder.
It is. Highly recommended.
Highly recommended.
Get high while watching it.
Oh yeah. Oh. Oh yeah. I did not this time, but that's okay. Okay, but talking about I almost said found footage. Talking about folk horror, what is our next folk horror movie?
Well, it's funny that you bring up found footage, Mary Beth, because we are diving into found footage folk horror, say that 10 times fast, with The Borderlands from 2013, also known as Final Prayer. It's on Tubi and it's on VOD. It might be on some British BFI channel, according to my Apple TV app. So it's out there. I'm excited to watch it. Mary Beth has seen it.
I love it.
I'm excited for this one.
It's really good. I wrote about it recently for Dread Central, about it having one of the most fucked up endings I've ever seen in a movie. So if you want to read that, go over to Dread Central. But I'm very excited to chat about this movie. It's incredible. I am curious if you'll like it, but I'm excited to chat a found footage movie with you.
Hell yeah, me too. But who are we talking to on Monday? Because there's a lot of who's.
There's a lot of who's. So we have our biggest recording ever on Monday with the Addams Family. And no, not the Addams Family like da-na-na-na.
Da-da-da-da.
We are talking to Zelda, Lulu, and John Addams and their mom, Toby Poser, with their new movie Hellbender, which is on Shudder this Thursday, or next Thursday. And they brought with them the best movie of all time, The Descent.
Masterpiece
Theater.
Of a movie I've been wanting to talk about this entire time. Finally was delivered to us
with an incredible
have a great story
group of
for
people.
It.
Yes,
a great group of people. Oh my gosh, they were just the most loveliest bunch of people ever.
Oh my god,
love them.
It's
Love them so much.
They're so kind and smart and great. So get ready. It's not as chaotic as you'd think. We were very surprised. It was not
worried,
chaotic at
honestly.
all.
We were very worried.
So, yes. Oh, I'm so excited for everyone to hear that conversation.
I'm excited to edit it again and listen to it again because it has been a while. We recorded it a minute ago.
Oh, we did. But listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. Did you watch a film we'd watched this week and have thoughts? Do you have suggestions for movies we should talk about? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I'm at MB McAndrews.
And I'm McGailey Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And, we're giving out found footage recommendations if you review us, so please do that. But also make sure that you're rating, reviewing, and subscribing, because I'll tell you what, they really help our algorithms.
Yes.
And if you subscribe to us, even if you don't listen to our episode right away, you get those day one downloads. And let me tell you, those are super important. So please and thank you.
Please and thank you. Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thanks everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there. But most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Won't somebody please think of the children? Won't somebody please think of the children? Somebody please think of the children.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you
in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.